Hello, everyone. Welcome to one more podcast of the Athletic School. Today, our guest speaker is Rockne O'Leary. He's a sport performance coach for youth athletes and athletic adults, focused on developing mindset, leadership, self discovery, and confidence. Rock, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, when I went to your profile the first time and I saw on your bio saying sports is what they do, not what they are. I was like, I have to have this guy on the podcast to talk about that because um, I don't. I really agree with that. I think that's very very true. And I think as an athlete myself, we forget about that we are the sport. It's just we are not our sports, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so, I mean, how did you come up with that? Why do you think that?
Well, I guess through my own personal journey is like I kind of figured that out. And I guess I would ask you, is that something that you went through as well as an athlete?
Yes, I mean, yeah, I still do. I just finished playing soccer now, so I mean, I can promise now. I think I'm more aware of that difference between myself and soccer. But I think a few years ago, I thought my life was soccer, and honestly, I mean, I don't think it brought a lot of benefits having that mindset.
Yeah, and I think we're both living proof of that because at some point, it is taken away from you, whether it's by choice or not by choice. And then
Yeah.
so what happens after that? You go through your whole life. When did you start playing soccer?
Why did I stop?
No, when? When did you start playing soccer?
Not too long ago. We just finished the season here. I'm doing my masters, so I guess November. That was last time I played.
Last time you played? And how old were you when you started playing soccer?
I don't know, like 3, 4.
See, there you go. So
Yeah,
your whole life you played soccer and you're how old now?
25.
25. So that's, 22, 23 years of playing soccer and it's super easy to identify as just a soccer player, right? I
Hmm.
started playing football, American football when I was 5 and I played up until I was 22. So I had 18 years of playing football and, football was everything to me, right? And that's all I wanted to do. It was my favorite thing. I always told myself that I was going to be a football player. My dream was to go to the NFL. I only had one goal, and I wanted to play football in college. Um, and once that ends, it ends. And sometimes, if you're good at your sport, um, you get validation, you get recognition for being good. And those external things kind of come up to you and say, "Oh, I'm good when I do this. If I make the right play, I'm good." And you get that validation, that external validation based off of how you play. But what happens, sports are chaotic and sports are crazy. There's injuries that could happen at any time. And there's been plenty of examples that people's careers end
Hmm.
and you don't have that identity as a player anymore. And so then what happens to your life? How do you then see your life? Can you still have an amazing life not defining yourself as just a soccer player, a football player, or a basketball player? And I think that's just super important that we start to, as an athlete, you start to use that as support, but really understand yourself and accept yourself for who you are because and it doesn't even have to be with sports. Think about all the times people identify as their job, right? So it's pretty relevant, I think, everywhere. And you want to be confident that you're going to have an amazing life no matter what. You're going to have an amazing life, if you're not playing, if you don't have the big house, if you don't have the big car, and you want to be good with yourself and accept yourself, even without all those external things kind of giving you that validation.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I think we can go to so many different ways talking about that because I think we're talking about college sports and for audience that are listening, they're college athletes as well, but we often see a lot of professional players that once they stop playing their sport that they're playing, they get into depression,
Yeah,
and they don't really know what to do because I mean that's all they have been doing their entire life. So
yeah, and that's even a crazier thing I think about because think about all of these athletes that come and they play on the biggest stage in college. And we know it's unbelievably difficult to be in that top 1% or whatever it is to be a professional athlete at the highest level. And you go from playing at some of these big Division One college where you are idolized and you're playing in front of 80,000, 100,000 of people, and you are the man or the girl on campus, and you get everything. And it's like, what happens after you graduate? And there's only a very small percentage of people that make it to that next level where that is actually what they do. And then what? Where's that validation coming from? Because I mean, how, what, like once you're gone, they got the next recruiting class coming in. Like, they don't, you're not that, you're
Dang,
gone.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, you can't build your life off of that. And you could even say that for the professional athlete that's played, 18, 20 years, and that was what they did their whole life. And now Father Time's undefeated, so everybody can't play forever. And then what do you do with your life after that? And so, it is really an important thing that we kind of have that self-acceptance and that self-worth, and we cultivate that from in here and not outside.
Mhm. So one of the programs that you have is the Man in the Glass.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What's the Man in the Glass?
So the Man in the Glass, it's a poem. It's the Man in the Glass poem by Peter Dale Wimbrow. And where I first learned about that was in high school. We had an award that was created for integrity and good decision making. This was it was a football award only, and it was only voted on by your senior class teammates. So, and only a senior could win it. And like I said, the winner was chosen for integrity and good decision making. And I had won that award my senior year of high school, and still to this day, I would say that that is my most proud accomplishment. Seeing that my peers, my best friends, the kids that I've grown up with, played with, and they kind of viewed me in that light, and to me, that was always the best thing, like my most accomplished thing, still to this day that I'm most proud of. And the poem is all about, you can cheat the world, you can cheat everybody else, but at the end of the day, the person that you can't fool is the person staring back at you with the glass, right? And one of the lines from the poem is, you could fool the whole world down the pathway of years and get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartbreaking tears if you cheated the man in the glass, right? So you can make it look like you're doing all this stuff. You can make it look like this, that, if you're working hard, if you're doing the right thing. And again, you might get that external validation because it looks like it. But at the end of the day, the person you can't leave is yourself. And if you can't look back and have that rock solid bond with the person that you see staring back at you, then it's, that's really hard. And ultimately kind of goes back to not taking the external things, right?
Mhm.
And you're not your sport, you're not your job, you're more than that. And what is your relationship with yourself like? And my coaching program, that's kind of what the idea of it is, don't cheat the man in the glass. And it could be girl in the glass too. The poem's just called the Man
Yes.
in the Glass poem.
Yeah. Yeah. Important to mention.
Yeah.
Uh, so in the program itself, are you working with mindset and then the physical performance aspect of it as well? Are you doing a little bit of both? Is that it?
I think for especially young athletes, um, similar to the training side of things, young athletes, they're not professional athletes, they're not adults. They're high school kids, they're middle school kids. So when it comes to the mental performance side of things, their program should be based for a middle school and a high schooler. And I
Mhm.
just kind of think about some of the things that I would have found important at that age, and you know, things that I'm into now, I probably wouldn't have been into as a high
Mhm.
school kid. And so with that, on the mental performance side, it's sort of keeping it pretty simple, just one, becoming self-aware, so teaching athletes about how to create awareness for yourself, good habits, good decision making, things like hey, who are my friends? I think really as a kid, your friends are so important. Like, who are you hanging out with? How do they influence you? What kind of decisions are you making? Those are all relevant things for youth athletes and all kids to understand. And then just little practices of like journaling. Um, Journaling to me is has been really life changing, and that's a practice that I am really consistent with, and it's one I've been practicing probably for the last 5 to 7 years, and it's helped me a lot. It's like so transformative, and as when I got into it, I wasn't as vulnerable, I wasn't as connected, I didn't like to open up, and journaling at that time for me, I would call it like a cheat code because all I had to do was open the book, write something down. It had to be true though, so you can't write anything that's not true, but
Mhm.
it has to be true. And then I could close it. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to, put it out there into the world. It was like kind of that safe space for me to write down, either my thoughts that were negative or, this is going on. And it was just a good, clearing, safe space to release all of that stuff that was kind of in my mind where I didn't have to feel like, oh, if I speak this out loud to somebody, like they're going to judge me, right? So journaling really gave me that safe space to start that, you
Mhm.
know, um, and that's a technique that I go through and teach with the kids. And it's a
Yeah.
good practice to get in because when you go back, and it's really powerful, when you go back and look at some of your old journal entries and see the way either your self-talk was or what was going on, like that is real-time feedback of your growth and development.
Mhm.
And that's super powerful. Like some of it's so powerful to me that I never would have imagined, it affecting me that way. But when I look back and like, wow, I was really there. I really have started here and now I'm here in terms of my development and how I feel about myself. And it's pretty amazing. And so I would encourage everybody to at least give it a try. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. There's plenty of other techniques to use, but I think journaling is a really, really good one.
Yeah. I think all those techniques that you mentioned, in terms of decision making, self awareness, those are those are little techniques that are gonna help them become better athletes, but also, just better human beings. If
Yeah.
they don't pursue the sport that they are pursuing at the moment. Um, and I think, people that are listening to the podcast, they're probably tired of me talking about journaling because I agree with you 100%. Um, I don't know if you are familiar, but I just love talking about it. There's a book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius,
Yeah,
uh, and it was basically his journal, and
absolutely.
I mean, everyone that comes to the podcast, and when I look back and, we study a little bit of, the great people in history, they all had some type of journal. Um, and I just keep asking myself, why are we not journaling more? You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah. What's
and
your strategy like? Do you have a prompt or do you free write? I'm interested to
I
know.
mean, I just free write. I think
Yeah.
for me, it's very so as an international student, being away from home, I think it's very complicated to open up sometimes.
Hmm.
And we also don't want to worry people back home.
Absolutely.
So I think journaling helps a lot in terms of just putting my thoughts out, and just bringing some clarity. And then it helps me with self awareness at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think I've been trying to find, things that I'm grateful for and write it down as well. That's something that I've been trying to do since I read the Happiness Advantage, a really
Hmm.
good book that I also recommend. um but sometimes just I just talk about how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
because just sometimes we don't have no one to talk about it. And personally, I have a hard time talking about my feelings, so I think talking to my journal makes things a little bit easier. So
I totally relate to that.
yeah.
Totally. Um, and I think you talked about writing down like things you're grateful for. A strategy that I heard recently about doing that, which I think has been, I started practicing it and I think it's really good. That might be helpful for other people. Is I think gratitude sometimes gets overused,
Mhm.
so it's like, oh, I'm grateful for the sun or my
Yeah.
family or this and that. And you just write that down. But if you take it a step further, I think it, and do it this way. it does really make a strong impact where you say, I'm grateful for X, Y, and Z because, and you say why you're grateful for it. And then after that, say, this is important to me, or why is this important to me? So now you create the why behind that's important for you and why you're grateful for it. And I think doing it that way is just a much stronger kind of appreciation and getting it out there as opposed to just writing down, I'm grateful for this. Now we're putting the meaning behind why you're grateful for it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree 100%. I think that is definitely helpful. Um, and one of the things that you talk a little bit about it, it's personal connection, inner strength. Um,
Yeah,
how can we create that? And I mean, honestly, I think journaling it's probably
that
a
would be,
good
yeah.
way to do it. But is there anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think journaling, that's obvious what I'm gonna recommend that.
Yeah.
There's a few things though that I think come with that, and I'll start one with this acronym that I came up with called ARROW, ARO, accountability, responsibility, and ownership. And accountability just means that you are your word. So if you say you're going to do something to somebody, do it. If you make a commitment, keep the commitment and see it through. I think that's for the accountability, and so now you start to build that trust and confidence in yourself. Responsibility is preparation, doing what you're supposed to do, good decision makings, things like that, being responsible for yourself. And then ownership comes down to personal responsibility. You own your decisions. You're not trying to blame others. You're not playing the victim. You're not pointing fingers. Um, you're telling the truth. You're honest, right? And I think all those three things together start to help you kind of cultivate that relationship with yourself and how you see yourself.
Hmm.
Um, so so that's one. Um, I think another one would be being involved in like a community of some sort that gives you sort of a sense of purpose, and that's why I think sports for kids are so great. Because if you have a strong team culture, that that is huge. That is huge because then it's not just about yourself. You're doing something bigger than yourself. And it doesn't even have to be sports too. It could be in like a music program. It could be an after school club or anything like that. I think those are good places to start because then that starts to help create some connection. And I do think that's really important. So those are a
Hmm.
couple things.
No, I agree 100%. And I think I had one guest speaker a while ago, and we were talking about there's this mindset of like the lone wolf, that you should focus on yourself and everything. And he was mentioning that there's a lot of mental masturbation around that, just being by yourself and focusing and blah blah blah. But the number one thing that helps people become successful, it's actually having a community. It's being
Hmm,
part of something.
yeah,
And I think I don't know, I think it's just sounds better when you say like, yeah, no, let's locked in, I'm in my room and I'm working by myself. And when it's not as pretty when you say like, yeah, let's go out, and hang out with your friends, because um that's actually what help us become successful in a way. And
yeah.
I think
On
it's very important for us to be able to separate those things.
Yeah, it's so like the saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Mhm.
But to the alone side of it, I also think creating, self-acceptance and worth and having that bond, that rock solid bond with yourself, does come from a little bit of solitude, not loneliness, solitude and stillness,
Yes.
and silence. So taking that time to kind of just sit and be with yourself without all of the distraction, um, is also really important to kind of getting in touch with yourself. So that's why, a lot of people like to meditate. It's a really good one. Sometimes even if you just sit by yourself and with nothing. You don't, not a book, not music, just sit there and just see, stare at the wall, stare outside, see what comes in your mind, let your mind filter it and just let it go. Whatever comes in and let it go out. And I think that's a really good one. That's what really works for me with kind of like calming the noise in my head, is just
Yeah.
being alone, taking some time for myself, and really just being able to sit with my thoughts, which sometimes can be really scary.
Oh
Sometimes
yes.
if you give people to sit 5 minutes and they don't have any sort of distraction, they say, "Oh my God, I'm thinking about all these crazy things," and that's really uncomfortable. But sitting through the discomfort of that is really where I feel like you start to create that connection with yourself. So I think there's two sides of it, right? You want the solitude, the stillness, and the silence, but you also want that team community to make it feel like you're a part of something, that is bigger than just you.
Hmm. Yeah. I just finished reading Sustain Your Game, and and the guy, the author, talks a lot about working hard and everything, but he also mentioned like how to prevent burnout, how to improve performance and stuff like that. And he mentions a lot about like how it's not pretty to talk about rest, it's not pretty to talk about sleep, but it's just as important. If you look at, I don't know, Cristiano Ronaldo, LeBron, all these guys, they're like, when they are not training, they are resting, they are recovering. They're not just hanging out there, and they're just not working hard. There is a lot of smart work behind as well. And I do think that you mentioned something that it's very scary to sit down with your thoughts, but I also think it's a habit that we create, right? I mean, the first 5 minutes, I mean, it's terrible. It's just like when you go to ice bath. The first three
Yeah,
minutes feels like you're gonna die, but after it gets better, it gets better, and once you come out, you're just another person, right? So
yeah,
I think it's about creating a habit. Putting our phones to the side. I struggle like I think everyone else nowadays, but I try to put my phone down sometimes and just go for a walk. It's just crazy how we can hear the birds singing sometimes, and it's like I didn't even know that we had birds here. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
so I
I
think,
just
yeah.
I just moved to Nantucket for the summer, and it's a totally different environment than, what I'm used to. And talk about listening to the birds, like it's so peaceful here with the
Mhm.
water, and kind of you can hear the birds. You can almost, in a strange way, hear like nature talking to you, and
Yeah.
it's very healing and meditative, and it's really cool. And so that's kind of a new thing for me that I'm going through right now,
Mhm.
is being more connected to nature and kind of what that's like, since I don't really do any of that
Mhm.
when I'm home.
Yeah.
But I feel it very calming and peaceful, and it's really cool. I've never really felt that, but I could feel the energy of the nature kind of like giving me peace. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So that would be another thing that I would encourage people to try and do something different that you're not really used to.
Yeah, and since we're talking about nature, there's a technique called grounding. When you're touching the nature itself, and there's a lot of studies that show that helps with recovery as well.
Yeah,
So being barefoot on the grass helps you recover more than a lot of things.
yeah,
So I think people should go out, listen to the birds, and barefoot and just sit on the grass for 10-15 minutes, and I think that can change their life. So
amazing.
um you talk a lot about success and self-awareness. Do you think success and self-awareness are connected?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think success can really be defined differently depending on, you know, each person. For success to me might mean something different to you.
Yeah.
Um, but I kind of looked at it for myself as, you could have your external things of success, meaning whether it's recognition, money, and those things are all important, I think. And those are things that I definitely strive for. Um, but it's also the stuff of having a sense of purpose, am I being a positive influence or mentor to kids or just other people? If I can impact some people, that to me is success. Um, and then also just striving to become the best and highest version of myself too.
Mm.
And in that pursuit, um, you know, that to me is also success because again, going back to the journaling, I can track that and
Yeah.
I can see what that progress has been like. And if I can do that as a life well lived, I would consider that successful. But I would maybe the most important thing for success, I would look at the quality of my relationships with the people that are in my life, because relationships, you have a relationship with everything, and no, I certainly don't want to go through life alone. I have an amazing family. I have amazing friends, and they enrich my life so much. So if I have strong, meaningful relationships with the people that are in my life that make me so happy, that to me is the ultimate success, is what kind of relationship I have with my family and my friends, significant other, work people. That's my ultimate definition of success, is the quality of my relationships.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't know what their definition of success is, which it is the first problem. But I think a lot of people know their definition of success, but then because they are not self-aware, they don't feel successful. And I think that's very, very tricky. And and if we're not aware of, if we are being successful or not, that's just makes our life harder and harder.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
I think it
think
comes back to what your values are. What are your values? What are your virtues? I think those are kind of your guiding, that's like your roadmap, sort of, is your values and your principles, and that kind of guides your decision making.
Mhm.
And if
What
you
are
live
some
in,
values that you have?
I think, you know, personal development, so striving to be the best version of myself is a value that I have. Again, the quality of my relationships, um, trust, connection, vulnerability. Those are things. Those are things that I value a lot. Hard work and living in alignment with who I am. Those are sort of the things that I really value. What kind of character do I have? Am I inspiring people? Am I having fun? Laughter. I love to laugh. Like I like to laugh. If you can
Mhm.
make me laugh, I'm going to spend a lot of time with you because it's just something that gives me a lot of joy, is to laugh and be around people that have sort of that energy to make me smile. I think it's a contagious effect that makes me happy. So, I like having a lot of that in my life.
Yeah. Um, okay, one last question. If you could send a message to the world, you're gonna have a billboard somewhere that everyone's gonna see it. What does that message is gonna say?
I'm gonna bring it back to the relationships, because you have a relationship with everything. You have a relationship with yourself. You have a relationship with your parents, your siblings, friends, significant other. You have a relationship with the world. You have a relationship with your job. Um, and I think if you can understand how you show up in those relationships and how you want to show up in those relationships, and I do think that deep inside us, everybody kind of already knows how we feel we should show up. And that's kind of like our conscience talking to us, right? We kind of know how we should show up to these things. And if you do that and you show up to the relationship the way you feel is right, you're going to feel pretty good. You're going to feel pretty aligned with yourself. And so that might not be a catchy tagline to put on a billboard, but the
Yeah.
message I would say is focus on the quality of your relationships and start with your relationship with yourself. And from there, you're going to be able to distribute the best version of yourself to everybody else.
Hmm. Awesome. I like that. Especially the one with, ourselves. But do you think that, you mentioned like how we show up to relationships that we have, right? But do you think that sometimes we have to cut some relationships out because, I mean, I don't know, it's just not for us, or there's nothing that we can do? What are your
Yes, and
yeah?
yes, you some so this has been an amazing conversation, and a lot of it sounds super easy. The
Hmm.
reality is none of it's easy.
Yeah.
That's the actual reality of it.
Yes.
None of it's easy. We've talked free flowing, and it sounds like it's super easy. None of it's easy. It's none of it's easy at all, and it's really hard. Um, I wish to say it was easy,
Hmm.
but it is really hard, especially if you're in a place where you don't, you know, you're not maybe not in such a good place to start any of this stuff, and you have things that are going on that you don't know how to work through. But that's why it's important to reach out and talk to somebody, ask for help. Um, but no, it's definitely not easy. It takes work, and that kind of goes back to the habits, your habits. Your daily habits sort of reflect your daily beliefs about yourself. And so how you show up each day kind of reflects how you see yourself. And that starts with awareness. So it's all kind of connected, everything we've talked about today. And it's definitely not easy, but if you do the work, it works. If you do the work, it's fulfilling, and it does work. But the one thing I know, you can't force anybody to do it. So they have to want to do it. It does no good if you try to force somebody to do it, but they have to make the step to want to do it, and then you just go through your own journey of transformation, and it's awesome. It makes life
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
worth
that's
living.
very, very interesting. There was a conversation that I used to have with one of my partners in athletic school, and we always got to that conversation back and forth, like, can you help someone that doesn't want it to be helped? And I mean, some people they don't want it to be helped. Some people they don't know they need help. So I think it's very, very tricky because everyone is different, but I think there's also just so much that we can do, right? I mean, we can force that much.
Yeah, you can't force it, but you can be a positive figure. Don't force, but you might say something or do something maybe for them at that time where they didn't receive the information, and then maybe something changes in 3 months, a year, 2 years, and they remember, hey, Igor said this, and now maybe it's the right time for them. So it goes back to how are you going to show up, right? Don't focus on the things that you can't control. You can control your attitude and your effort and how you show up and how you treat people.
Yeah, yeah. That's also. It sounds easy, but it's not an easy
It's
one.
not. It's
Yeah,
no. It's not.
you
It's
know,
not easy.
I study a lot like stoicism and stuff. I'm reading a book right now about it. And the main thing is like, yeah, don't control the things that you can control. Don't try to control them. But I'm in a period of my life that, damn, I can't control anything that is going on.
Yeah.
Like, well, what am I supposed to do then? Just wait. So it's very, very difficult. But again, I think if we have a little bit of self awareness, if we know that we can control. It's okay to we freak out for 5 minutes and then we come back to ourselves and then I mean life must go on.
Yeah.
So
Everybody. We're human, right? You can't. You're not perfect. You're gonna do things that oh, I shouldn't have done that,
yeah.
and it's fine. You don't have to be perfect. I mean, I can think of so many times that I tried to you know improve, and I messed up so many times. Like, I mean, I've messed up so many times until I got it, and I still mess up. I still mess up. Um, but I know that I'm going to keep pursuing, trying to continue to be the best version of myself. So it's okay to mess up. It's okay to fail as long as you keep striving to become the highest version of yourself.
Yeah. Rock, Thanks so much. Great conversation. Love all the insights that you gave. I'm sure people are gonna relate a lot and and take a lot from it. And hopefully, they just don't listen to it, but they start doing it as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Um, very grateful to have you here. So
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I am very grateful for you having me on, allowing me to have a platform to share my message. And that, let's keep building a community and always being a resource for people to reach out to if they need it. If anybody wants to follow me, my Instagram is at Rockne O'Leary. I will answer if you reach out to me,
mhm.
and I am going to run a 6-week mental performance program. It's going to be virtual. We'll meet twice a week, keep it short and sweet. And I'm taking signups for that. So anybody reach out to me, happy to have a conversation and just serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Have a good day.